situation in Serbia is out of control, including the selection of latest administration in Serbia, which was very much continuation of the previous socialism regime, but also it is reflecting certain gang layers that exist on Balkan for a longer period of time and are supported by international operations that need such kind of people in order to serve the international capital. Such choices are always disastrous for local population and in long term are disastrous for the entire system. Such choices, such politicking, such international politicking, which is based on selection of convenient members in governments rather than protocol, each of the territories being part of the planetary energetic table and will need to function to its best, is certainly appear to be two different approaches of international governance, and it is time that we switch the previous with the latest that I'm developing here, and that is we need to manage each of the territories to its best, not to its worst, especially when intentions are the best, not the worst elsewhere in the world. It is time to change the world as well, including what kind of choices that world is making. When in question international political setting. As much to greater extent, this is not just influence of American, but also of Russian politics. This is of Eastern politics as well. I'm going to clarify that I'm already using New Zealand and Britannia, and to great an extent even America, but certainly New Zealand and Britannia as a centerpiece for my work. Not that much Australia, but certainly New Zealand and Britannia, I would say, are territories that I'm occupying with my work and with my look at the future, and would like to point out, therefore, that New Zealand and Britannia are already being taken by this work. I would like to point out to international community, again, New Zealand and Britannia are reserved to the work I'm deploying on the planet, accordingly for me and my kids, and will not be available further on in the future for any kind of more serious international cartels, oligarchs, or whatever. That is my look into the future. I certainly have into the future as well the entire new world, having it into perspective. I'm certainly reserving rights with this work, which is look into the future. Preserve rights to new world entirely, and would not find these territories anymore home for international gang cartels, including Western territories cannot be home anymore for international gang cartels, because this is where we usually deploy. We should be there for deploying the latest developments, not to be used as some kind of garbage depot, while in the same time we are launching here, or we are investing the latest findings, the latest inventions. And I'm speaking here in the most positive ways. And if we want our civilization not to be always the worst of the outcome that one can possibly think of, then we should start, therefore, thinking of these territories as a protectorate, as that is where our civilization works in the future, and they should be protected against the dearth of international choices. I here do not split the world of West and Eastern and Western world, but I split the world on old and new world. Criteria civilizational development. But as much as I have recognized Macedonia as someone that can be more in control and more even softer, more convenient to be protectorate, to be the house, I would still notice that it was in that Macedonia where I found the little people, the little family, the family of little people in shadows of our families, and but also yet ultimately in a process, my father, which was in category of gentle souls, and the main reason why I cannot send him further, because he is a gentle person. And if there is a reason why someone is using reference gentleman in England, that is because of my father-like character. And for all of the reasons why we still need to keep these characters, I would not call that the outlaw or to keep him for the worst and the grossest of the jobs, Macedonia. So they end up as a candles in the church. So we end up burning as a candles in the church, and then you use that as a mainstream civilizational protocol, burning of people as a candles, the sensitive ones, overburdened by the tasks of maintaining what then ends up to be your society. I can't give you that much. I can give you credit for your softness, but I can't give you also appear to be I'm bringing it more than yourself. I mean, if we are talking molecular protocol, the softness is with me rather than with Macedonia. I mean, for that purpose, you need China and India to bring the softness. How Macedonia end up into softness, I think that is rather one more misconception, and not understanding who really delivers softness, the phenomenon of softness in Europe. And it was my mother house still that I'm going to vote for. And my mother didn't know how to make cakes how to make pita, how to make a pie, but it was a bit more harder for her, complex. Too much demanding. But she was making us cakes and the most wonderful jams. And very delicious meals. And I think that counts for a higher level of engagement altogether. Certainly next level. And my mother would go on the market and bring all of the stuff and make it. and there was that kind of energy and enthusiasm. My mother certainly brought the entire concept of household on next level. So there was that energy that I'm going to certainly still see as a winning in this overall Macedonia protocol. And Macedonia, I'm going to argue, would never be mega Macedonia if it was not the international factor. And I think Serbia is very right, where it wants to point out that actually it was the fabric of Serbia all over the place. And Macedonia was just one in category of tribes living on the territories. But nothing there was that much sterile as you would find it on Nordic territories, for example. And Macedonia it is very correct to say become some kind of Nordic island on Mediterranean rather than something natural, and certainly become proxy event similarly as it was Judaism of Israel for purposes of serving the Nordic approach. I can't call that even Macedonia anymore. But here it is, I wanted to say, it is a house in my memory, and even when I see it as a house, I still end up to notice much more my family in that regard, with the energy engaged, with just energy involved, that stamina, that eagerness, the dimension in that was on the stage, that was not a sleepy mode exactly. These people were really proactive, really shaking, moving things and trying to do something, and so on and so on. Let's notice a reference of gentlemen in England accordingly again, and how it is being spelled out with reference to respectfulness. I'm not going to discriminate Macedonia on this, so it is very hard to speak to Macedonia about being discriminated, as usually that goes in other way, in other direction. But I'm certainly going to say accordingly, to say again, I don't have intention to discriminate, because in my overall history I can notice I have such elements in my character on some kind of historic terms. So maybe it is good to say that I do not have intention to discriminate Macedonia on any of this. In contrary, I would look more or closely at Macedonia and to try to understand how it works, or it can work to the best in its own environment, if we can call it like that as well. Anyway, it is historically the environment that exists in such configuration, and it should be respected as such. I mean, positioned as such. Nothing in reference to relationships, which is something on which we need to work now. After everything I have said, one will need to really summarize things, or it will be just too much to follow. I have to point out that is something that I would literally even written on the sky, and that is today we confront as number one enormous differences in development of various regions. And that is going as that far as in some parts of the planet people are starving or not having basic conditions for life, and on some other part of the planet, and that is much smaller part of the planet, people are having that much of wealth that doesn't make any sense. And it is more like we are missing the point on this planet. We on this planet are missing the point. The ones that are having wealth feel equally unhappy as the ones that are not having a wealth. Something here on this earth is wrong. And that something is the way how wealth has become treated as something that is not supposed to be earned, but gained. And then the ones that are gaining it are the ones that do not have credibility to dictate the life itself. I'm going to point and pull out here the word dictation, dictating something. Who is going to dictate becomes ultimate question. First and foremost, we have established overwhelming presence of men on function, which is traditionally in all the time of a woman. Commanding the house is woman event, not man event. Political house is a house and housing of a civilization. In prevalence, you find here female protocol and male is in the shadow. Though it might be it is like that as we speak, but it might be that we have a wrong woman playing the queen of this earth. And I would not have any problem to envision how she would look like. And that's the problem here. Germanic approach of a planet, of a leadership of a planet, continue to harass this earth to the end. And where this earth gets nothing in return but being forgotten, being declassified, being turned back to, or being used and misused. If you are good enough, you will be misused. If you are not good enough, you will be walked over. On this planet, nothing wins. For a longer period of time, on this earth, nothing wins. And that's the problem of this earth. Inequality in economic development of the territories and inequality in wealth distribution are the main problems of the planet. Let's repeat them all together, Earthians. That is, first of all, inequality among the regions and the nations, and second, inequality within the principles, or within the economic principles, within some kind of business community which has become global, or has become comfortably capitalistic, have become comfortably centralized in terms of who is going to suck the wealth from the planet and how it's going to be distributed among the rest of the population. We have become worse than any tribe in Africa. Or maybe should I say equally as Africans. We have become Africans of the planet. And what is typical for Africans of the planet? Have very centralized wealth management, like any other prime tribe, like any other gorilla or guerrilla approach, which is a main gorilla on the top and everyone else in service, or a head gets out. In a few minutes, you lose a head there or what. So that's typical. I'm going to call that African template. African template. Main gorilla on the top and everyone else head down or no head on the shoulders. Now we are reaching, we are still in that kind of template. And if someone is going to tell you that Africa has been occupied territory, that someone is lying. You. No. We are being occupied by Africans. Would be the real event here. And as much as in this on this colorful protocol we call realm, the colors matter, the intensity of colors matter, and how we notice them and what they represent matters. I have not chosen the other extreme in this kind of colorfulness of the planet. Neither I have chosen that much of a colorfulness at all, as much as I have chosen nicely balanced pastel, rather neutral colors that are not expressing on personal level speaking, not expressing any kind of intensity of anything, but certainly are not either, they are nothing of being boring. However, I have never found fighting boardroom has to do something with intensity of the colors, rather than with someone's with my capacity to bring forward much more balanced taste in choices I am making. Much more balanced approach in the pastel colors of my choices. Much more balanced approach in the pastel colors of my choices, which are nothing of boardroom, but are nothing of missing the point either. Artians, but are nothing choices that are nothing of missing the point of meaning of life either. And with all of my clever choices I have made, I'm still the loser of the planet. Shadows are not where they are supposed to be in my life, and the light is not where it's supposed to be in my life. And if it is not like that in my life, how on earth that it can be like that on the planet? It's not anymore about who you are. It's now about the choices we make. It is about the choices we make. Forget about your shape, body shape, even about the shape of the culture. We are in this conversation on very personal level. Who you are as a person, and what kind of choices you are making as a person, and how you think as a person, and how you think as a person. As much as you have been asking me who it is me, I'm equally asking you today, and who it is you. Of course, I'm asking that for already how many years, and who it is on the other side as well. Song going on in Macedonia. I liked very much the title. What is your wave frequency? It sounded very cool in my time, somewhere in 80s. What's your wave frequency? I never got that question. Now that I have explained my wave frequency here very much thoroughly, I will need to ask the other side, and what is your wave frequency? Because I have impression you continue to dominate the stage. I have to notice you're gradually losing it to no one else but me. You're losing your stage to me. Maybe it's going to be easier for you if you answer that question. And what is your wave frequency? Hello? Can we please answer that question? What is your wave frequency. We will conclude therefore this work with what it sounds a pledge for tomorrow and every single day of tomorrow, and that is we cannot accept on this planet Africans, talking to you as well. We cannot accept on this planet enormous wealth disproportions in overall planetary development of the regions and nations. We just can't accept that, and we can't accept the way how wealth is redistributed among the population, among the citizens, which is rather personal level as well. Personal level of criteria and redistribution of wealth which we all together generate, because the resources belong to all of us. That's true. Not in some kind of literally ownership way, but more in some kind of entitlement approach. As a earth population, we are entitled to resources of this earth equally. And we can allow, someone on the account of expertise, professional, or even more of a labor intensity employed here, and qualified labor as well. Both are usually would be rewarded on vest somehow, within some kind of justification, either work intensity or work qualification. One compensates for another, and it makes sense. But a mouth can eat as much as a mouth can eat. A roof can be there as much as a roof can be there, and should be there for everyone else, as that is what humanity is, and that's what human protocol is. Everything else is leisure. Leisure. Leisure or what? Leisure or usurping everyone else for a money that are not even yours. For a money that are not even yours. Our ultimate question would be how to measure personal value, how to reward personal value, as much as we need to return to this earth and start servicing it how it should be serviced. In that context, I will certainly ask Africa, what is their price? Africa that sits in America today, I'm going to ask Africa and Africans, what's their price? Everyone does have price on this earth, right? I'm asking you, what's your price? Africans, you have a question for today. Should I ask the one walking in their shadows as well? Because I can. What's your price? Serbia, you know very well the second question is not going to sound like that. You know that very well. Let's not taste the waters of the oceans. Africans, second time that question is not going to sound like that. Artians, the students, repeat the questions 3 times 30 per day. What are our main issues of the present times? Regional inequality in development and inequality in wealth distribution. Artians, repeat it 30 times, 3 times per day. Artians, salut. there was only one grave opened in England. Only one grave opened in England. Would you guess which one was opened in England in last century? Only one grave was opened. It wasn't the grave of Mary, it was the grave of Elizabeth. Which indicates in the same time there was no such thing as Elizabeth and Mary. There was no need, obviously, to open two graves, because there was only one Ark of Covenant in a given time. Someone knew, obviously, that there can be only one Ark of Covenant or only one Holy Grail in a given time. It is also going to explain why to present days someone on British Islands is talking about witch and bitch in singular. Obviously, they know very well who they're talking about. That is why was only one grave opened, because they know very well who that was. Now, of course, the next question is, why such reference to someone that would be in category of agreeable nature? Also, Queen Elizabeth also said in a couple of occasions, it is Elizabeth Mary here going on all of the time. It's Mary Elizabeth. Is not there is no need therefore to talk about two people. In that entire house of historic heritages, there is no need to speak about two people, two persons. There would be only one criteria, only one standard to only one historic reference in a given time. Another question I would like to pull out from that entire event, as it is Historic Heritage House of England, which is central to my work, because today I want to contradict the very popular narrative of trading the resources. I want to actually walk the resources and engage resources, because we're talking about human resources. And it would be pointless to trade human resources if you are not going to use them adequately. Ultimately becomes about protocol human itself and how we are going to manage that protocol on the planet. It is ultimately not here a question what rule we can really accept here and how far rules can be accepted. When it is in question, ruling usually becomes imposed as a solution to the problems, or should I say relative to the issues. Pay attention to details. The solutions in a territories, over territories, would be relative to the issues. Leadership is answering and relative to the issues. It is not something fallen from the sky as some kind of comet or I don't know what, detached from everything that's happening, but then does have a relevance. In order to have a relevance, we'll need to be related. So to stay in fear, like if I lose the criteria, entire Zimbabwe is going to knock on my doors, excuse me, and with what relevance they would be knocking on your door? Also at this point I'm questioning whose door we are talking about. Whose door we are talking about. Today I'm bringing forward the question of ownership, of the door itself as well, of the house itself, of the protocol itself. The protocol itself. Context, I'm also going to disagree with bringing forward too much of conflict, Catholics versus Protestants, or any other religion, Orthodox, for example, as well. That would come here on the in highlight. I'm going to find that basically rather standing on the way of understanding the issue in more correct manners. I have not mentioned Muslims because I'm talking about historic heritage of England, of all of the times. Britain, rather. We would be rather speaking Britannia than Muslims. We would be rather talking Vikings than Muslims, right? In any case scenario, even if it happens that we discuss Muslims, I have to notice that the tiles in Britannia as well in England are solidly black and white. True. With strong reference to red. True. To what I'm going to bring the subject of reference or the subject of relative. Relative to the territories and relative to the issues. Accordingly, we would not be talking about strong jumping here. We would be talking about what continues to be European subject of the times, rather than intercontinental subject. And that would be civilizational level of educated minds and walking the accomplished civilizational criteria and standards. It was undoubtedly about civilization walking on its next upper grounds. As that is why I'm pulling out historic heritages, as my intention is to save civilizational developments. Not to talk about human rights, although of course is going to be the subject of the agenda, but the point is that I want today to actually speak about exactly something opposite, what sits on the top. Because I believe that any solving of the problems begins with properly detecting hierarchy, as the final outcome is going to depend of us properly identifying hierarchy, so we don't repeat the mistakes of last century, where enormous movement happened all across Russia and China, taking away so many lives, millions of human lives, an entire civilizational accomplished structure of these territories at that point of time, and no one was paying attention of the historic hierarchy and the structure of civilizational development itself. Structure of civilizational development is what bothers me in my work. All of this 15 years I'm discussing nothing less but structure of civilizational development from its earliest times to the present times, following one same niche, the structure of the top of civilizational development. And I argue the solution of all of the issues continue to be from how they are going to be seen on the top. It is a waste of time that we argue on anything else, but what should be sitting on the top. And it would be also a waste of time if someone is going to go out there and oversimplify that answer. Oversimplifying that answer is going to be a waste of time. Let's notice, in order to defend today the civilizational protocol, one will need to defend the upper houses. And in that context, one will need to notice that it was Europe walking in Britannia, and it was Europe walking in America, in USA, and anything else, it would be wrong to say. Europe is the one that is going to filter everything that will need to be filtered in times. We're talking millenniums of times before civilization steps on Britannia as a upper stamp. It will be Europe walking there, and since Muslims are not exactly how Europe declares itself on its mainstream top level of political leadership, I'm going to assume that that's not going to subject that should be therefore discussed that much, as in the entire in the entire history of Britannia, most of the arguing was done actually on the level Protestants versus Catholics. The best we can do is also here to question what Catholics stands for, or which sounds clearly Catholic, and then I would question in how much that has to do with Northern Ireland, for example, or with Scotland, for example. I would not perceive that population that much in a Catholic protocol. Maybe Irish would be to some percentage complying with Catholic protocol of Britannia, but I would not say that Northern Ireland or Scotland would be falling in the description. So at this stage we're losing track of why we should be giving that much weight to religious polarizations whatsoever, or it is time that we confront the next level of discussion, and that is the real fabric of the value system and the stamps that would be declaring upper houses of decision making in a given time. At this point, I see decision making as a problem solving approach, and I see problem solving as a matter of competence, historic as well as specifically related to present times, as historic pathways are pathways upon which we walk today. We walk, and are historic pathways that are giving us information what it takes today to surface anything in this world, really. And that is not money, but skill and expertise and education. And what I argue here is that this is not criteria that we are going to pull out in 21st century. That was criteria that was surfacing our civilizational development from earlier times, from medieval ages. These were the criteria that were surfacing the civilizational development. Even when it was walking on west, it would not be walking on west if it was not surfaced by criteria, skill, education, expertise. And that is what you end up being, why Europe is going to filter everything that is going to come from Far East or Middle East or whatever East, is because Europe at a certain point of time, at medieval ages, developed most developed standards of civilizational development. Simply, it is how it happened. It is what happened. It happened. Europe continued to be a certain kind of filter for any professional entitlement, for any professional occupation of the Western territories. Although Middle East wants to compete now with sending their kids at universities, I'm talking here about historic heritage houses and about stamping and protecting historic heritage houses, because everyone nowadays wants to talk about trading, and it is time that we clarify what on earth is being traded, and who is playing patron in authorizing or playing authority to such cultural rhetoric of the present times. Because I, for example, would not be using that cultural rhetoric. I would not be exactly walking that language on top of the planet. That is why I feel as pulling out or declaring political houses of decision making and of order under my roof, because I happen to believe that I have right to that. Because in such houses have not evolved out of such rhetoric. People that have been sitting there have not been using such rhetoric while have been building the nations and the civilizations of the times. They have been developing different cultural value systems. They have been growing in different value systems. On this occasion, I'm going to exclude more extreme monarchies, as including Russians, which appear to me more nomadic than European. At some point, there the Mongolic kingdom, Mongolian kingdom, become a Russian kingdom. So I have issue to understand how that changed. That Mongolian kingdom says stopped, and then now we are talking about Russian kingdom. Russia is to a great extent Asian country, and the overall monarchical development of Russia would be uniquely different than. Well, I'm talking here certainly about cultural criteria evolving in a time when speaking especially about about development of value systems on the territories. I have intention to seize, to confiscate the top political decision-making houses of the planet from any spread of tribunal culture on the planet. I'm on mind that these houses cannot be given to tribunal cultural settings because they have developed, I'm arguing, out of the top developed criteria and stages of civilizational developments of the time. And that is why, for me, it is very important that I clarify today that in Britannia, there is only one throne, of which they still refer as witch and bitch in all of the Britannia, and that was throne of Elizabeth, which was actually throne of what it is, I would argue, that is rather character of Mary, and walked in under nomination Elizabeth. And we have similar situation. Elizabeth is referenced as it was Olympia in Macedonia. It was reference to a title. It was Elizabeth Mary. Accordingly. That is why there was no need to open 2 graves in Britannia, in England, but only one. Therefore, it is not that I do not feel some kind of national compassion, or how you would call it, some patriotic feelings for Serbia or Macedonia. It is rather that I can't synchronize my work with their positions. Neither I can see them being bothered with any of it. Most of the time it is not me hurting them, it is them hurting me. And I want to make clear when it is in question my relationship with them. From the very beginning, it was defensive. I'm here on defense positions. I have done a lot to give them to stamp them. I have asked United Nations to give them status of temple territories, which means, well, certainly it prohibits them from trading any of it as well, because it is stamped in certain kind of reference, in certain kind of meaning that connects to other kind of meanings. They become part of certain protocol that exists on its own and is beyond national sentiments. And that is international bloodlines and international and overall civilizational development that happens on certain parameters. The civilization on this planet is developing on certain parameters. And that is international event, not national. As much as somewhere in Serbia they tried to bring some kind of highlight to how they have been influenced by Central European values, as Vienna, for example, and that in Serbia people have been behaving equally to a certain extent as aristocratic as they would be in Vienna and or in Central Europe. What they're trying to say is that they're still walking as a periphery of something. What I do here is not about walking the peripheries. It is about walking the top. And I'm going to find it on these territories where I'm going to find it or where I found it, when it was top that we can talk about. And then we stopped talking about it as being a top of something. And that will need to be accepted as such. As time is walking as well, as what is the civilizational surface in a given time. I have to follow the line of civilizational developments because I need to surface it here as I need to defend it versus everything else that is endangering it. And that's my dedication. It's not national dignity or national integrity. That was not my dedication. My dedication is to defend the civilization of this planet to its highest of the value systems, highest of the accomplished premises. That was my promise. And I don't think that by standing on such positions, I would be endangering any of the undersigning positions. Keep that in mind, please. Most of the time I'm defending the civilizational development on territories where it will need to be defended for the sake of everyone else. Because that is where, in fact, civilization worked. Like it or not. It went in Western Europe, it went in Britannia, it went in USA, and no one can deny that. There is only one question we have today. What it takes that we save what we need to save. For the sake of all of us. For the sake of all of us. Because we all depend on it. I'm not going to fall in mercy to some headquarters in Africa or in South America anytime soon. Or in Russian Mongolia. Or Mongolian Russia. It's not happening. And if I can't rely on someone in Britannia and USA, then I know what to do next. I'm going to do what is the most possible and doable to declare my houses in England and America and USA. And that is the most realistic to me solution. Don't expect to me, you adventurers sitting in Serbia, you adventurers sitting in Serbia, or you adventurers or travelers, world travelers sitting in Macedonia, that I'm going to go after your adventurous spirit. For me, world means something else. And I have made very clear what it means for me. I'm going to go where I'm going to find the houses, not where I'm not going to find it. Serbia and Macedonia, understand me properly. I have house to defend in England. I have house to defend in USA. So I'm going to notice that it becomes increasingly main conflicting line, but also revelation of present times. How far in all of the historic times intelligence has been kept hostage to much more predatory approaches to life and living on this earth. To present days, I'm going to say that there are two categories of people. The one that are enjoying life, are talking about life as enjoyment of a lifestyle, and others that are talking of life as a matter of accomplishment and problem solving. And it continues to be, I have impression, that the ones that are winning and controlling the territories, the ones that are living life just for the joyfulness of enjoying the life, and ultimately the ones that are saying life also is a matter of problem solving, end up to be some kind of machine or some kind of usable in the endeavor of the previous to continue to live their life with intention of joyfulness, and others, since they're that much dedicated to problem solving, and end up to be in the previous times referred as to machine, and today are even being referred as to artificial intelligence. It is time, therefore, to ask, due to what today the leaders, the actual dominance of the planet, or should I say usurpation of the planetary leadership, is on the side of lavish lifestyle lovers. Is it due to reptilianship, or it is due to human that still is prevailing on the side of being predator within the manifestation of its physics and physical criteria versus mental criteria? I have been using for quite some time example of a classroom, but in a classroom of 30 students, 1/3 would be with upper accomplishment and 2/3 would be average to lower level. The reality is that usually the party system and democracy function on the principle of majority of the voting rights. Ultimately, what that means, when you get out of school on the streets, who wins there? Certainly not the best top, right? The ones that are winning on the streets and in the rest of the life, and the ones that go away with rising all the way to controlling the entire planet, I would argue as well, would be therefore the 2/3 of the majority in the classroom, which represent physical dominion. That is what kills Caesar in Roman imperialism. That is what kills Kennedy in USA. That is what is us in USA. And that is why I'm not going to say USA of us preceding today on anything. But I'm rather going in England where I can walk and fight on it in the specificness of the meaning of that title, rather than to compete with us in USA. Also would be questioning, of course, what it takes to become from I in England into us in USA. Well, exactly the majority, but it is easier to get unleashed on sides of the territory as it is USA, and it is harder to control it from smaller, obviously, percentage of what is the top classroom. In USA, it's harder to do that. That is why large territories do not win in this kind of discussions. Argue in Russia would have been different, unless it is not. Because in Russia, what won in last century was working class. Today they are the oligarchs. Today they're the one that wants to trade the temples rather than to listen to the temples. So Russia is going to be to me what Russia is today. I'm not going to assume something about Russia. It is what it is. It is us Russia is us, very similar as it is USA. Russia is not I, although it looks like that, but it is not. And it is very hard to expect such large territory to be so successfully controlled in all the times by the minority of the top of the pyramid, which is intelligence, intellectuals. I'm talking about classroom top of the planet, classroom hierarchy driven approach, classroom in the schools top, defined top in the parameters of school system, of education system. Beyond what it is, the subject that is being studied. Just the approach the students are using, the dedication and the honesty and sincerity versus someone sabotaging the system. Sabotaging the system, but then comes, as my sister, sabotaging the entire concept of education and then getting on the top of it by sabotaging the system. And then it's going to surface the system. What system we are talking about? Surfacing what system? A system of predatory, right? The jungle system. Standing there as a boxing society. Playing physical on me. Because that is what you have been your entire life. Nothing else but physical. Well, certainly you have not been intellectual. These are the two options available. Either you are intellectual or you are physical. And you stood on the physical side yourself. On the physical side. To irritate someone. To exist your entire life as irritation. And nothing else but irritation. Yugoslavia. Stamped as such as well. Irrigation. Why irrigation sounds as irritation? From where on earth you even found irrigation system? Irrigation. That is watering the fields with developed watering system. Why these words are so similar? Irritation and irrigation. There is only one letter here different. T replaced with G. It makes me to laugh when I just think of how seriously certain people are devoting their entire life to make some difference on this planet. Just to be topped up by something like that. In all of the times. It makes you to laugh in the face of all of it. And if I sound most of the time like that, well, then you know why that it is like that. Let's notice what I want to make a point here. Intelligence of the planet continues to be hostage to the physical dominance of majority of the population of the planet due to the fabric of development itself and how development happens. It happens from the educated percentage of population, not by one that are less or hardly educated. Yet when it comes to voting rights and democracy, what gets on the surface are lavish lifestyle and everything else to conquest, right? Well, that formula is a wrong formula for building a civilization or defending a civilization or walking in the name of civilization or talking in the name of civilization. And today, it is about doing your homework first before you start marching on the streets. You do first your homework. Understand things first. First understand things, then you talk about justice. First, you understand things. It is not the same to talk about justice somewhere in Zimbabwe and somewhere in New York. Or should I say, somewhere in Europe. And if you go in Europe to notice in Europe what you have noticed, then explain to yourself these questions of yours properly. I will never forget my sister making laughter out of my father when he was old and not anymore, obviously, that much in control, if ever he was really. Making my hardly educated sister that knows anything in her life, well, traveling, poor thing, never in her life, nowhere, playing a number one idiot in the family, being bought and controlled by some kind of bunch of low-profile circles out there in that low profile of Macedonia, laughing at my old father while on the phone with me, laughing to his sanity, laughing to his lost sanity. That is how far this physical event goes. End up to laugh in the face of intelligent, sensitive souls, troubled in its own ways, but not properly understood, not properly categorized, not properly employed in a society that was not sensitive enough for sensitivity of such people. Intelligence is sensitive, and robust societies will never be succeeding to be the drivers of it. So I'm going to ask Balkan, it is time to give up on thinking of yourself as a lighthouse of Europe. It is time to confront the reality, Balkan. You are not the lighthouse of Europe. Because we have to talk here about prevailing numbers, about prevailing value system. And that is something that you on that Balkan do not have. The prevailing value system in that Balkan is not there. You may argue for one, it is like that for one reason or another reason. I would say you prevail on the prime side. And there is not much to be said here. We are talking about history of millenniums of times. You prevail on the raw prime side. And it is time to accept that, equally as Maoris in New Zealand will need to accept it. To accept what means raw and prime. And you cannot walk raw and prime as higher or upper, because simply is not. I give you an example of my sister, so you will understand how that works on your territory. Third aspect, returning to the protocol itself, monarchical protocol. I have noticed the sensitivity here within my bloodline, within my within the temples, I would call it, obviously, and the principal temples. Even when I drive it to some metaphysical proportions, as it is, for example, India, as it is, for example, everything that would be in reference to some kind of philosophical protocol, and on that branch, the beauty as well happening as a metaphysical approach would come as a level of sensitivity and manifestation of sensitivity. I have to notice that at the moment in Britannia, what is on the throne is not enough sensitive, and it is not enough beautiful. From inside, of course, I'm talking about. And I'm going to question, would it not be happening some kind of switching point in the monarchical lineage of Britannia, where we lose the sensitivity presence, the sensitivity protocol. I'm going to notice it is too much of a New Zealand Maoris approach dominating today the entire throne of England. It is rather robust, assertive. It is pushing. It is kind of intruding rather than attracting. And that is not beauty. Beauty doesn't intrude. Beauty doesn't say 10 times per day, I'm beautiful, or I'm the most beautiful. Beauty doesn't do that, especially not sensitive beauty. So that kind of a rather attacking approach that comes from that protocol, it is not how sensitivity behaves, and it is not how beauty in substance of everything behaves. So I'm going to notice that we have departure in Britannia of monarchy protocol of today from its actual flame, which is not flame as a fire, but as a reference to life energy, which is much more something that is rather delicate and rather very sensitive, flickering rather. I can't notice that flickering in the present definition of monarchical heritage House of England. Maybe it was to find it in Elizabeth. Maybe it was to find it in Two Sisters. But then we lost it. We just lost it. I wouldn't say that would make much significance also if we talk about flickering on surface of things. When we talk about flickering of a candle, you make reference to the vertical point, right? Flickering with what? Vibrating with what? If not with intelligence. If we not talk about intelligence, with what on earth we would be surfacing the top of the human if it is not the head itself, from where it is the headquarter. Head is the headquarter is a reference to a head, for God's sake. Not someone laughing, not someone harassing someone, not someone stoning, not someone being rude or being physical. No, nothing of that. It is headquarter in reference to a head and nothing less than a head. So England, Maoris, I think we have to notice more of you there than it should be there of you. Maoris, my verdict for today. England, my verdict for today. What I'm also saying, England, is that I can't find much of my father there, and if you can't, I can't find much of my gentle nature of father there, then what kind of gentlemanship you would be talking about? All the way to your throne, of course, England. All the way to your throne. And if I can't find my father there, how on earth am going to happen? England? Oh, I'm puzzled with this question now. Ultimately here we reach again the question, what kind of energy would build the world? What kind of energy will stand up to think of nation before you think about your own appetites or whatever preferences? That would happen rather on the level of chicken fight, rather than thinking of nation. Prince Charles, today King Charles, spent most of his life fighting for his personal satisfaction, personal feelings, and being were as prescribed, right? So he's not going to lose what he can't afford to lose. I'm not sure that is a definition of gentleness or sensitivity that walks in my bloodline. Nothing of that walks in our bloodline. In our bloodline walks different kind of perceptions, different kind of priorities, different kind of perception, and different kind of priorities. And as long as I can't find any match here, well, then I can't find it. Perception and priorities. Pay attention. The perception and the priorities. I'm going to find, therefore, in substance of the entire history eaten and continue to be eaten, protocol masonry, which happened to step over the protocol monarchy, as the protocol Masons is all about basically circling or having as a centerpiece the royal blood or Sanct Royal. And it all goes into rituals. And these rituals are not because someone is hungry, but because it is in question something that they will find therefore subject of some kind of combination of worshipping and actually killing. It is, I worship you, but I'm also killing you. Because I'm consuming you and then I become you. It is point of takeover. A Western protocol of masonry is protocol of takeover. That is where Scotland, entire Britannia, and USA today will need to be addressed, and they will need to be noticed as a matter of millenniums old conflicting lineage with the rest of the Europe. And that is the order of masonry and what has become centerpiece to order of masonry. And I don't want you now to go into that much of the details as how Dejan Lucic of Serbia is doing it, and then we forget what we are talking about today and what is our principal subject of today. As much as our principal subject today is real royal blood, the real subject in USA and in Britannia is going to be, accordingly, masonry order. The masonry order I'm going to find as a central piece to the entire concept of Western takeover. Forget about Bilderberg, forget about any other protocol. The fact is that what is royal in Britannia is something else. It is simply something else. And I really don't know where it starts, that takeover. Over somewhere from the walls of Roman imperialism itself. From the walls of, even from behind the walls of ancient Macedonia. And what it was and it is ancient Macedonia about. By drawing straight line with the rest of the planet. And that line being drawn in the way how even Macedonians themselves can't understand it. As appears that that entire history is not even theirs. In the way how it has been projected. in the way how it has been projected as ancient Macedonian history, or as ancient temples. And it starts from Alexander not declared as not being exactly Macedonian, right? We already have graduate build-up of takeover, which escalated to huge proportions in Britannia and in USA. Let's notice the driver to that entire ritual-driven history today is Masonry order. At the point of given time, historic time, it was about Crusaders. Remember, they started the protocol, the Crusaders, and then developed to such scale Masonic order. How much it was within the tribunal societies themselves, somewhere in Israel or somewhere on Balkan, is another question. And that's going to question how far history starts from Balkan at all. And what else begins in Balkan? And the Europe that starts in Balkan. And the entire concept of whiteness becomes questioned. But as long as I'm going to find in Europe Olymp as it was Nastasia Kinski, for example, which is some kind of double of my character, maybe a bit more gentler. As long as there are characters as Nastasia Kinski, Africa, I'm going to question still on which side the devil sits Africans. Africans, as long as there is Nastasia Kinski in Europe, I'm still going to ask on which side the devil sits Africans. Protocol Serbia and Protocol Israel are withholding African context. African context, how far that goes, and how far that goes. Because in Africa, people are sacrificing things, sacrificing other humans. If that Africa walked in Serbia and walked in Israel, then it walked with it the sacrificing that is happening in the prevailingly demonic continent of the given historic times. Well, because it was other developers, it was very, very prime stage then. I'm not going to buy anything else that I can't say it as we speak. As far and as long as I'm going to find Nastasia Kinski, hear me well here, humans, as long as I'm finding Nastasia Kinski in center of Europe, not in center of Africa, I'm not going to be convinced or confused on which side the devil is, or was and is still. That is how it goes. Exactly like that. Now, when I have described properly, the royal blood is about flickering, sensitive intelligence. And when I point at a black house calling itself White House of America, I have to apologize to Elvis Presley now. White, prevailing on the white side. When is the case? I will notice America for what I'm going to notice. I will notice in America a subject that I need to bring in America as a subject. And that is what I have to question. The Masonry order, of course. And to what it sums as the present days. And if I'm going to read the history how it was unleashing today in front of our eyes, and noticing the name of the order, Masons, I will notice that it is in question, obviously something being here hidden lost trace from the actual real reference to what that would actually be referring, and that is rather to father than to mother. Of course. Someone ended to call Africa mother. To the extent that today, in present times, I split the realm to female energy being the cloud protocol and male energy being the ground protocol. It will need to be amended, the previous comprehension of mother and father energy, accordingly. Mother cannot be considered as something much more robust or rough and tough, when in substance we are all aware how mother energy happens in this realm. Neither father can be called something that father cannot and should not be, as it is not. Because father is the one that is not giving birth to a baby. Father is the one that is not bringing that sensitivity charting. Father is the one that is not bringing that level of perspective. Father is the one that is not delivers such needs. Father is someone that defines the different kind of needs. And that is why father is always going to be father, and mother is always going to be mother. As it is standing for something as more sensitive, I can't give it to Africa. I'm giving it to Europe. Africa will be the father, because it is going to make more sense. So now, how far? I'm talking here within some kind of metaphysical levels. I'm talking here when it comes to talking about what kind of stage we are as a matter of overall civilizational development. When you find in a society prevalence of much more sensitive female approach, it is more developed stage of civilization. When you find in a civilization still prevalence of some kind of male energy, you would know it is earlier stages of development. That is how I would describe this. And no wonder we continue to find America to be how it is, because America continues to drive on male energy. And as long as that's the case, America will continue to be what it is. As today we fight for Britain. It is Britain being tasked with answering what drivers are going to be recognized in that island, on these islands. What drivers are prevailing on these islands, or what drivers should be prevailing on these islands. As in Europe, I'm very certain, prevails female protocol, because Europe managed to deliver that stage of development altogether, of more developed civilizational protocols. Now, how far Europe continued to behave as a predator, still it is a matter of Europe not being exactly itself for a longer period of time, or I can also say that we are still here in kind of settling into all of this. Energies on the planet are still very much prevailing on the prevalence of raw energies, especially when it comes to dominance of capital and investments, and what comes with capital and with investments. Where very often Europe happened today to be rather some kind of Eurovision stage than anything else really. And if you want to blame Europe for whatever you want to blame Europe, let's notice that in Europe also you're going to find all sorts of layers, like everywhere else. There is, you can use approaches where you're going to generalize something, But then if you want to play it more specific, then it is something getting more specific. But let's understand here the context as well. The context. Europe is not exactly what it is Mongolia. Europe is not exactly what it is Africa. Europe is not exactly what South America. For all of the credits that Europe will earn on that note, let's play specifics when we should be playing specifics. Let's answer what kind of capitals are dominating Europe today, and how far Europe is still not broken, rather than the old Europe. But it is rather broken Europe, with lost leadership, lost even identity, and even lost proper structure of its population. But we are still calling these territories same names, no matter what kind of turbulences that they are going to experience. And if it is up to the standards, let's be more careful discussing the subject. Where it begins. The prime, the raw, the troubled, the earlier, where it begins and where it still sits. The most. Therefore, fraternity society, it is time to ask why the order is still called Mason's order. Should I follow up now what's happening with my children so I can understand it properly? Americans, Mason's order. How we are to understand it now. Mason's order of what, Americans? Mason's order of what? Of drinking royal blood. Fathers, you have a question to answer today. Fathers, you have a question to answer today. Why mother sons? And as speaking of sensitivity, certainly I'm not going to find it less on the land of my parents each time going there should looks as exactly going to find something. Because why on earth else I would be going there if it would not be each time going there to find something that I need, so I can then talk about it, and I can search for it, so I can stamp it. Now let's notice, when I have been pointing out about earlier houses, I am meaning it. I still mean it, because if I can still find it in the soulness of the nations and cultures, if not in the political subjects of the present times. It would be therefore defined why we each time return to homelands and what we would be searching for. These are rather normal events, you would say, yet very often not being paid enough attention. What I wanted to say is, in the closure of today's presentation, after 2 millenniums of developing history from positions of upper houses, today we can only talk about nations, about cultural identities, and very often when I speak about imperial bloodlines, or this rather would be international bloodlines, we will be talking today about nations created on such parameters. And I have been always also pointing out very much on multicolored. In most cases in Europe, you have 3-colored flag, which would be indicating nothing else but mixed bloodline, mixed imperial bloodline, which in substance would be creating nations in a given time. So today I wanted to say, when we are going to round up on a national identity, it would be therefore very much that we end up talking about nation rather than a family. And what once upon a time was tribe, equally was actually a family. A family becomes a tribe, and tribes becomes a nation. And it is then easier to find your brothers and sisters somewhere in your nation. Not maybe not all of them, but 1% of that national identity would be there, that you find your brothers and sisters exactly sitting there, and sensitivity is there to find to the present times. Now and then it's going to spark out in its own time, and it is as what it takes to be. I want to sum therefore on this entire subject of today, that we end up today talking about not just about temple houses or upper houses, but about fabric of nations. And then on such parameters, we need to recapitulate each time what it should be all about. Leadership becomes returning to lost memory and returning to lost history. But above all, as you can notice, returning to identities that continue to be a critical point on which humanity emerged once upon a time, and humanity will continue to drive on the substance of its own dimension. Human is the point of sensitivity of life energy. Artians, my verdict for today. Accordingly, in the context of the above, it is most natural that I today declare Federation of Earth, because we certainly have reached here a destination, and that is the west coast of USA. There is nowhere further to go. Further to go, you begin again. So one circle has been accomplished. At this stage, the best I can do is to declare Federation of Earth, and then to look back, or to look from the above, should I say, and notice our planet and everything that we have accomplished and everything that we have to deal with today, and to manage it in the most successful way. That would therefore comprise certain level of sense that we have accomplished one cycle as a civilization, sense that we have reason why we should be now playing some kind of retrospective and looking from the above. Reasons to recapitulate on many things, to clarify many things, and to also feel responsible about how we are going to drive it all together in the next period. So declaring Federation of Earth at this point looks to me the most logical. In such a way, we actually recognize all of the territories. People living on the territories will recognize history, will recognize various cultural accomplishments, various cultural features. We recognize where we have missed something to do on better terms, so we actually return there and we have to improve it and correct our previous mistakes. And we recognize where are the points from where we can all learn something and take that something as a knowledge for all of us to use it for purposes of updating our present cultural settings and comprehension. Remember, it is about understanding, above all, comprehension, what we are, where we are, and how all of this approximately should be understood. And also how we should understand ourselves, very important. How we should manage ourselves, and how we should measure someone's definition of integrity, either personal or political and cultural. In that context, I would be declaring Federation of Earth accordingly to the work I have delivered to this planet. And on that line, I would expect that each of you, in accordance with your ambition to participate on these levels and have been here with me all of this time, I would expect now that you continue to be engaged on these levels, therefore level Federation of Earth, mostly on your own territories, because it would be appreciated, your understanding, knowledge about your own territory, where you would be expected, therefore, to employ that knowledge about your own territory and to assist my perspective, to do things on better terms on your own territories and to improve everything that you would find and need to be improved. We start from there. Artians, we start from there. Salute.